Hello traders, and welcome back to my YouTube channel IPDATrader. Now in today's video, we are going to be talking about the midline test strategy, which is something that I previously spoke about in the forex daily cycle video and in the Asian strategy video. So if you haven't watched those, you might need some of that information to fully understand what I'm going to be covering today. However, before we get into the actual video today, I've got a couple of things to say which are very important, and I've already actually said that in the YouTube community tab, but we're going to be talking a little bit about that right now, right? So um if you have been paying attention to the channel, you might have seen that I've closed the mentorship intake for now, and that's due to the fact that I'm working on a new mentorship structure so that everyone can be happy that way. It's going to be changing a little bit, right? The service is going to remain the same. You will have the same weekly outlook videos every single week, establishing potential biases and expectation, same Discord work, right, where I share my ideas, my thoughts, what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing. And essentially everything is going to be the same, just instead of having monthly payments, it's just going to be a one-time fee, and you're going to be in forever without any additional charges, right? That's sort of the structure that I'm trying to build so that we can have more traders and we can work through the community that way, right? So that's essentially what I'm working on. That's the reason why I'm not so active in the private community at this point, but I've already spoken with them. They know that we're just simply going to be, well, I'm just simply going to be working on that. Should be up and running in the following hours, right? When this video is published, the new mentorship intake will probably open in about 3 to 4 hours from that happening. So if you're interested in that, it's only going to be a one-time payment, and you're going to be in forever with the same service being provided every week, pretty much, right? So going back to the topic of the video, guys, we're going to be talking about the midline test, which is something that has a lot to do with the daily cycle. So if you don't understand the daily cycle, you might need to watch that video first. But if you do, then welcome to this video. I'm sure you're going to be learning tons today. And yeah, with all that being said, guys, let's actually get started with today's video. I've prepared a presentation, just like in the Smart Money Confirmations video. We're going to be going over some information, and hopefully you will be able to apply that information, right? Because once again, the markets repeat the same patterns over and over again. So the more you practice, the easier it will be for you to actually apply these ideas and concepts, and the more likely you're going to be to actually profit in the market. So with all that being said, guys, let's actually get started with today's video. So traders, with all that presentation out of the way, we're actually gonna get started over here. Once again, this video is probably not gonna be too long. I'm trying to make this one short and sweet, and we're going to get right into the topic of discussion. Let me actually prepare my drawing tool so I can help you guys out with that. Let's see over here if I can find that. Just a second, guys. Quickly, okay, that's there already. So guys, what I'm going to be presenting to you guys today is the midline strategy, which is something that I spoke about in the daily cycle video, but we're going to be getting into a little bit more of a detail, right? And I don't think anyone on YouTube teaches this, but yeah, we're going to be covering this. So I hope you guys can appreciate that fact, right? So it's going to be rather a short video, so let's get started over here, right? First of all, the midline strategy, when does this happen, right? This is very important to understand, because otherwise you're going to be looking for this to happen every single day, and it does not. Okay, very important. So you only want to be looking for the midline strategy on one side liquidation modules, right? You don't want to do that on dual liquidations modules, which is actually the majority of the trading days, right? In the majority of the trading days, you will have that dual liquidation occurring, which means that the Asian range, right, will have both sides manipulated. That's what will happen most of the days, right? If you're going to be having a bearish day, you want the Asian high to be taken first, with the Asian low probably creating some sort of inducement for them to take this Asian high into a structure point probably over here that they can then sell into to take the Asian low and have that bearish expansion for the day, right? That's very important. That's a dual liquidation module, right? When you have both Asian range highs and lows being manipulated, which happens very often. If you go through your charts, if you actually apply the right settings in terms of determining your Asian range, you will see that how most of the days both Asian ranges, meaning the Asian range high and the Asian range low, will be manipulated. And the midline strategy, which is the equilibrium point of the range, which is something that I previously spoke about, is essentially only going to occur on one-side liquidation modules. Okay, so let me quickly draw a one-side liquidation module over here. So that looks something like this, right? You have your Asian range. Let's say this is roughly your 50% of the range. And once again, this is your Asian range. And if you're expecting, let's say, a bullish day in this market, right, then you probably will see the Asian high first. Once again, this is sort of the opposite to the dual liquidation module, right? We said before in the dual liquidation module that for a bearish day, you will have the Asian high taken first, right? And this time for bullish day, you will have the Asian high taken first as well. But the important characteristic is that your Asian low, right over here, needs to be sitting pressed against higher time frame structure most of the times. Well, what does that mean? And do not worry, we're going to be getting into pictures in a second, but this is very straightforward, right? If your Asian low happens to be pressed against some sort of structure, right? Let's say this is an origin block over here that you have that was responsible for a BOS, and your Asian range low is sitting right on it, right? Very important. Then you can anticipate a one-side liquidation module. And if you're looking for bullish price action, you still want to see the Asian high taken first because the Asian low is probably going to be protected. Why? Because it's sitting and it's pressed against structure. Very important. And those are the days where you will expect that midline test into a POI. Most often not, you want to see that taken into an FU candle, right? And then you will have that continuation for the bullish day, and the Asian low is going to be remain untaken because once again, it's pressed against a structure point, which is your key. And once again, do not worry, we're going to be discussing that idea a little bit more in depth with pictures in a second, right? So just said, this only happens when you suspect one side being protected, whether that is the low or the high. You have to look at your structure, and usually happens after one liquidity pool has been taken, which is essentially what I've just explained, right? You will see that midline test after the Asian high or low has been taken, right? Let's say the Asian low gets taken and you suspect that the Asian high is going to be protected because once again, it's pressed against structure over here, right? So you suspect that the Asian high is going to be protected for the day, then you see that Asian low taken first, then you expect that midline test at roughly a POI within the 50% of the equilibrium point of the range, right? Pretty straightforward. You will see that price will take the Asian low, will return into the midline, and will continue dropping. Why? Because the Asian high is pressed against structure, and institutions are telling you that, hey, we have no interest in getting above this high, because if we actually wanted, we would have done that over here, right? We would have expanded the Asian range high further, taken out this high, right? Because what do we know about this? This has liquidity on top. So if they did not do that in the Asian range and the Asian high actually prints over here, then you know that the midline test might be valid for that day. But once again, I'd say about 70 to 80% of the days you will have the dual liquidation module where you have the Asian high and low both manipulated in a single day, right? So again, most effective when combined with daily cycle times, which for the members in the community, if you review the trading plan section, we have that idea covered very in depth, the different times, the different ideas that you can expect around those times, right? So should be pretty straightforward. Let's see over here. We can now remove that. Let's move into the next picture. And I've essentially covered that just a second ago, but why the midline, right? You may be asking yourself, why is the midline important? Well, it's the equilibrium point of the range. Institutions don't like selling very cheap and or buying very high. Should be pretty straightforward. They can push the market to get the best price. So if institutions, once again, this is your Asian box, institutions want to be selling in that day and are not interested in clearing this liquidity high, which is Asian high, then they're not going to be selling over here, right? Very cheap. They want to push the market up into most likely the midline, where it's going to be a better sell price for them to continue selling, right? And you want to be looking for a midline POI, which means you're not selling at the midline, right? Over here, you're selling at a midline POI, which is something that you have to frame, right? If you see, let's see if I can do that. This is your Asian range, right? And you have a POI right over here, then this is considered your midline POI. It doesn't need to be over here, the midline. It's just your reference point. It's probably going to be, for bearish days, the midline and above, and for bullish days is going to be the midline and below that. So keep that in mind, guys. It's the equilibrium point of the range. If the institutions want to continue selling, they're not going to be adding more sell positions over here. They're going to be pushing the price up into a midline POI to then continue dropping further down. So please understand that idea very well and keep in mind that you only want to be looking for the midline strategy on one side liquidation modules. So for that, you need to first understand if one side is going to be protected or not, which once again, you have to look at where are those Asian highs and lows being printed. If they are actually printed against structure and high time frame blocks, then you have a higher probability of that being protected for the day. Right, and I think we're now moving on to the how does this look, right? So this is Euro USD. This is very recent price action. This buy area was covered for the community, but essentially what do you see, right? You see the Asian low right over here being pressed. This is your Asian low, and you're seeing that being pressed against this block, right? So the moment you see that the Asian high gets taken out, you're not expecting the Asian low being rated first, and we're going to, being rated second, and we're going to be zooming in a bit, but for now understand that idea, all right? And as you can see, you're not blindly doing this. You have to actually look at your structure, liquidity story, and everything else, just like in this case over here, right? We knew that we had a block over here. We knew we had all this inefficiency that we were filling on the way down, which we sort of did the mirror effect. We had liquidity on top, right? Manipulation of the ranges, Asian low, Asian high, midline test, continuation down. Same thing goes for this bearish day. And as you can see, returns back into the midline, continues dropping lower. But once again, we're focusing on this example over here, right? Because there's multiple variations. I'm not going to be covering every single one of them, right? We're focusing on the idea where you have the Asian low pressed against this structural block over here, and now you're trying to identify if we're going to be having a dual liquidation module or a one-side liquidation module, right? So we're going to be actually continuing over here. So this is a zoomed in version of that day, right? As you can see, this is your Asian range for the day. And what do you see? Well, Asian low pressed against that high time frame structure block to the left. Pretty important. So now you can suspect that, hey, this is likely to be protected. We have no interest in getting below that. Why? Because this is pressed against structure. Very important. And now what do you see? As we said before, you get the Asian high taken first. If you're expecting a bullish day, you suspect that the Asian low is not going to be taken in that day, and you frame your POIs. You could have said, hey, this is my midline POI, which is right at the midline, which is actually great. Or you could have been watching for this one. This one could have also been tapped and moved up. Or maybe a little bit of the lower one over here, right? But you know that we're not going to get below this low because it's pressed against higher time frame structure, right? So very important. You get that you get that one side pool taken over here, you suspect the other one being protected, and you look for your midline POIs to frame trade ideas, and you can say liquidity taken out into my block after grabbing this, we're likely to push higher, right? And that's exactly what you get. But once again, 70 to 80% of your days will be dual liquidation modules. So this is one thing that happens, but you have to be waiting for those days to happen actually, right? It's not going to be something that occurs every single day. So that should be pretty straightforward. We can now safely move on over here. Right, this is another example. There is a structure point to the left over here, this block, right? What do you see? The Asian low is printed right on it, right? Institutions are telling you, hey, this is the price that we like to continue in the intended direction, because if we didn't like this price, we would have pushed price lower, right? But they didn't. They put the Asian low right on the structure. So what do you get? Asian high taken above liquidity very cleanly, return into the midline once again, not exactly the midline, but the midline POI. And I can guarantee you, if you zoom into a lower time frame over here, you will see a POI in this area, which is exactly the gray box that I have. And you get the exact same thing, right? One side liquidation module where you take the high first into the midline test. And as you can see, it doesn't mean that you're going to be expanding all the way to the upside non-stop. It just means that the Asian low is going to be protected in that day. And as you can see, this is where the new day rolls in, and you have a very cleanly sort of range, right? There's no structure being pressed against these Asian highs and lows. And as you can see, dual liquidation module as per usual. And in the dual liquidation modules, you will always, you will also have midline tests, as you can see. Asian high first, Asian low second, return into the midline, you frame your midline POI over here, you drop further down, right? Very easy to read. You just need to practice this idea, and you just need to spend time in the charts, and they will stick to the eye. And as you can see over here, midline test again, right? Return into the block, continuations to the upside. Doesn't mean it's gonna explode. It just means this is protected for that day. Very important to understand. So, sorry, wrong tool. We're actually going to be going over a quick summary over here, right? As I just explained to you guys, most of the trading days it does not happen, as the liquidation modules are more common, very straightforward. You have to anticipate the protection of one side, which once again, for that you have to understand your structure, and you have to see where is that Asian high or low being printed, right? Where is that Asian high low being pressed against? Very important. And sorry for the typo over there. We're not, we're focusing on trading right now. So what else do we have? Asian range is your key to the entire trading day. That's facts. For anyone that trades daily cycles, they know that. The Asian range will always give you direction for the day. Very important. You can combine that with once again your structure, liquidity, timing, confirmations, all of that we teach in the mentorship. So yeah, very important. Combine that with your candlestick anatomy understanding, also an important idea. If you suspect a bullish day, once again, the reason why we want the Asian low to get taken first on dual liquidation modules is because of candlestick anatomy, right? If you're going to be having a bullish candle in a given day, you want to see it push down first, because once again, it's creating that tail, which is actually grabbing liquidity as well. So that's very important, right? You will see that price is going to be pushing down, then it's going to start rejecting, it's going to leave that wick, and then you will push up. Eventually, the high of the day will be made, and it's going to start pulling back, and it's going to leave that wick, and you have your four landmarks, right? You have your open, you have your high, you have your low, you have your close. This is how a bullish candle looks. Very important. You have to anticipate, are we gonna be getting a bullish or bearish candle in a particular day? And if so, well, what side should be taken first for that idea to make sense, right? You need to combine all these different items to really make trading work. So essentially, guys, lastly over here, do not force the midline trades. Very important. They will stick to the eye if you practice them properly. Very important piece of advice that I'm giving to you guys over here. So guys, with all that being said, remember that by the time that this video drops, the mentorship intake will reopen most probably for a one-time fee, and you're going to be in forever, and this service is going to be provided to you week after week. Do not worry. And yeah, if you're interested in that, feel free to check that out. I will probably post a community tab. I will probably post essentially a post in the community tab. Probably let you guys know through Telegram as well. So yeah, yeah, pretty much, if you're interested in that, you will be able to join fairly soon, right? So with all that being said, guys, thank you very much for listening. I really do hope this video provided you some insight and information that's probably going to be relevant for you in your trading. And just don't rush it. Make sure you understand everything. Rewatch the video if needed. And yeah, we're going to be continuing with the free YouTube content for sure, right? So with all that being said, guys, thank you very much for listening, and I will see you guys very soon. Take care, everyone.